This is crazy. Brand new details about Starship's 6th flight test revealed. Flight 7 quickly approaching. How long till launch? The mystery of Ship 26 has finally been solved, and the new design for the colossal Starship lunar lander and its low Earth orbit fuel depot have been revealed, changing the entire game. My name is Felix, welcome to What About It. Let's dive right in. Starship updates. Things have been moving at light speed for the world's most advanced rocket program. We have a lot of Starship info to cover today, so let's just get right to it. Flight 6 was truly remarkable, and while we were able to get some incredible footage, SpaceX released some footage showing their own truly unbelievable views. This includes a similar shot to the one we got just after Flight 5 of the landing flip and burn from the buoy, which gives us a pretty good look at how beat up the ship was after re-entry. Look at it. This only goes to show just how resilient Starship is as a vehicle. Interestingly, there is a section along the ship's heat shield that appears to be almost entirely missing, just baked away. Given that the ship survived the re-entry, these tiles most likely fell off during the final descent phase. We know SpaceX planned to stress this ship far beyond what they designed it to withstand, and this is likely a result of that. All the amazing footage that has been coming out over the past week has not only been a treat to watch, but it's also provided quite a bit of new information, and surprisingly not just for the ship but also for the booster. Despite the massive fireball we saw following the booster tipping over, that appeared to only be from the methane tank, and the liquid oxygen tank managed to stay intact and afloat for quite a while. Eventually, SpaceX did manage to sink it, which is also a very good sign for the launch pad's safety. While a failed booster catch would not be good, it's now clear that during a landing, if the booster were to explode at any point, the results would not be nearly as damaging as they would appear. A fireball on its own does not do much damage. An explosion, however, does. What damages most is the shockwave and a fire afterward. However, the pad is definitely not as resilient as we hoped. We now know that this is the reason that this booster is at the bottom of the ocean rather than back at the launch pad. Once again, we've been reminded of just how important Stage 0 actually is. We know Booster 13's failed catch was caused by a loss of communication to the tower, so it's no surprise that workers covered the pad immediately after the road opened to find out exactly what went wrong. Numerous things could have caused the tower to lose communication, which is why we've seen so much work happening here. Fortunately, this problem will be one of the easiest for SpaceX to solve, as they are already in the process of fixing it. You can see it partly implemented in the lower sections of the tower. SpaceX initially planned to cover the entire tower with a protective sheet. They likely believed only the initial panels would provide any protection, and the rest were more for aesthetic purposes. However, now it is clear that the tower really does need all the shielding it can get. After teams were done looking over the tower, they turned their attention to the launch mount, as it typically has seen most damage during launches. For some reason, this launch caused more damage to the tower than previous launches. However, the mount appears to be a different story, being in relatively good condition compared to other launches. We know that SpaceX has made great progress in reducing the number of repairs needed after each launch, as seen by the rapidly decreasing turnaround time and the number of components that need to be replaced. Hopefully, this will be the same after Flight 6 as well. Of course, it is likely that in this case Flight 7 will not be held up by the ground hardware, so even if more extensive repair work is needed, there should be no delays. Instead, the flight hardware and any possible regulatory hurdles will be the reason, but we'll discuss that in more detail later.
How hard is it to get permission to do that?
Permissions are a different thing. Technology is easy. Physics is easy, people are hard.
As SpaceX learns more about what areas need improvement on the ground to enable a rapid launch cadence, its second launch pad is well into development, taking all the lessons learned and applying them. Thanks to our recent flyover with Redline helicopter tours, you were able to get some incredible views of just how quickly this pad is coming along. Go to redlineheli.com/Felix and book your own flight. It's unforgettable and worth every cent. I've done the flight twice myself. This new flyover gave us a clear view of how far the work on the new flame trench has come, and it's clearly come a long way. It appears they will be taking it in layers, as much of the digging appears to have been put on pause, and the continuous flight auger has been placing even more piles into the ground. This machine can only place foundation piles so deep, which is likely why excavation is temporarily halted while the auger works. Work. It is still a mystery how deep this flame trench will end up being. However, a small area that has been dug deeper is visible, and it will likely continue being dug over the next month. We can also see that the commodities trench, which will run alongside the flame trench, is nearing completion, with most of it being filled in. Looking up from the future flame trench now, we can see quite a bit of work around the pad as well. One obvious thing to note is how clean the area around the pad looks compared to previous flyovers, and that's for a couple of reasons. The most obvious of which is the fact that we're missing a crane. Where'd it go? Yep, it looks like SpaceX got all the use out of the CC-8800-1 crane, which they had rented to assemble the segments of the tower, meaning they may even be ahead of schedule right now. Why is that? Looking at their filing with the FAA, SpaceX planned to have this crane here until late January of next year. That's not there yet. Of course, it's possible that SpaceX just realized they didn't need the crane for everything they thought they did, and can instead use some of their smaller and cheaper cranes to do the same job. As the tower itself gets closer to completion, it is only a matter of time before SpaceX decides to roll the chopsticks and the ship quick disconnect for this tower from the Sanchez site, where they are currently undergoing construction and upgrades for installation. The tower looks well fleshed out, and now that the Drawworks motor for the chopsticks has arrived, only detail work is left. The other reason it's so clean around the new pad is that they've completed the installation of most of the pipes in the area and have moved on to new sections to begin further installation to connect the tank farm to the new pad. Here you can see quite a large box that will house many of these pipes. You may be wondering why we didn't see this elsewhere, and the reason is actually pretty interesting. If you look towards the highway, you can see the main entrance to the launch complex, where SpaceX rolls in its ships and boosters. Big ships and boosters. The track that every ship and booster takes to get to either pad will take them directly over this area. Extra reinforcement is required to protect the pipes, even underground ones. The weight of the prototypes can transfer through the soft sand and dirt and crush anything beneath. The tank farm has also begun to expand, with what appears to be a second subcooler being installed next to the first, which we saw installed just before Flight 6. Overall, we've just seen quite a bit of work being completed ahead of this launch pad entering service, and even more of it's being completed away from the launch site at Sanchez. So let's head over there. But first, we've looked into our channel metrics, and there are over 2 million returning monthly viewers who have not subscribed yet. Help us improve the channel even further by double checking that you've hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our updates. Why? Because you'll gain access to a massive amount of extra content. With it, you get access to daily new Starbase photo galleries, including all those we've posted so far: satellite, aerial and ground photos, more than 400 posts in the past 2 years alone, with up to 7 picture galleries per week, insights, chats with me, you name it. Also, check out our print store at shop.whataboutit.space to buy a picture for your favorite wall and to support our photographers directly. Thank you so much, you rock. Now back to Sanchez and the new orbital launch mount. Quite a bit of work has been done on the overall structure, which appears mostly complete now. And it looks so way different than the old one. This is a complete departure from the circular construction at Pad A, and there is a good reason for it. The old design was generally just bad. Happens to the best, that's how you learn. When the main segments were connected, sections were missing between them, and SpaceX has made good progress filling those in. We can also see that they've begun staging some of the sections that will make up the water-cooled launch deck closer to the mount ahead of installation, meaning SpaceX is likely making quick work on the internals. Work on the chopsticks and the ship quick disconnect is also continuing nicely, and it appears they may begin wrapping that up soon, as some sections of the scaffolding have now been removed. And there is one more interesting thing in this picture. Can you spot it? I should have said there is a lack of something interesting in this picture, as we're missing a ship from the rocket garden. Where did it go? Ship 26 has finally been moved to the high bay for preparations for its flight. Or at least that's what I wish was happening, as instead of moving there to prepare it for what could have been an epic flight, Ship 26 was moved so that it could join its sibling Ship 27 and many others in the scrap pile. Unfortunately, this mystery vehicle was sliced apart like butter under a 1000-degree knife. That's it! With it, all hopes for a secret CIA vehicle or a tanker ship or a unicorn barn have vanished. It is truly sad to see this mystery ship meet its end in such an unceremonious way. While we mourn the loss of this one and ponder over what could have been, SpaceX will use the space that this ship occupied for many more prototypes, some of which may even be a unicorn barn. You never know, rest in peace, you will be missed. SpaceX just needs more space, especially as they begin ramping up production of the ships and boosters. Turning our attention from the high bay to the mega bay, Booster 16 has now received its aft section. Sure enough, similar to Booster 15, this one sports the upgraded header tank design, likely to allow it to fly the heavier Block 2 ships. More thrust, more power, more oomph. This aft section is now stacked with Booster 16, which marks the completion of this booster's LOX tank, which makes up its base. SpaceX will now begin constructing the upper methane tank. These two pieces are produced separately before being stacked to complete another prototype. Of course, this booster isn't the only one getting attention in the Mega Bay. Before discussing incredible news regarding the Lunar Starship, let's talk about another booster that will take priority in the coming months. Booster 40, which is set to be the next booster to fly on Flight 7 and the first to carry a Block 2 ship. It's Black Friday and there is one deal you don't want to miss, our sponsor Surfshark. We talk a lot about staying safe online. Are you really doing enough to protect yourself? Today it's easier than ever to boost your online security and get a killer deal. Surfshark is an easy, no-hassle solution to keep your data private and your browsing secure. Wondering why you need a VPN? Simple, it creates a private network for you, blocking prying eyes and shielding you from data breaches, hackers, and yes, sniffers, those nosy snoopers who try to access your info. Don't let them sniff around, you deserve privacy. The best part? Surfshark requires minimal effort. It even has built-in antivirus protecting you from sneaky threats like data worms and Trojan horses. Don't know what those are? Don't worry, Surfshark takes care of it for you. Ever worried about using public Wi-Fi? Surfshark's got that covered. It can even give you a fresh start with proxy emails and instant alerts if anything's compromised. Turn your online security into a mission possible this Black Friday. With unlimited devices, Surfshark protects your entire household, your family, your devices, all covered, all safe, all the time. So for a limited time, go to surfshark.com/Felix for 4 extra months of Surfshark at an unbelievable price. Surfshark, surf with your own set of rules, protect your digital life with this unbeatable Black Friday offer. Yes! With SpaceX pushing to increase the launch cadence, it's no surprise they will be working on this booster quite a bit, preparing it for flight as soon as possible. So that is one half of Flight 7. How about the other? And what about the most important question? How long before we see these vehicles take flight? Let's check out the hardware first. As of now, Ship 33 is still in Mega Bay 2, receiving its final touches. With cryo testing over, this ship's only remaining requirement is its static fire, which means all engines must be properly installed. Let's get it done. Fortunately, we saw SpaceX roll these engines into the bay shortly before Flight 6, so they should hopefully be installed by now. And these engines do have a different connection as a stepping stone to Raptor 3. SpaceX may want to be a bit more careful when working with these. The hardware will likely not be the driving factor for Flight 7's launch date, but rather regulatory approval. Oh, come on. We know this as shortly after Flight 6, Musk gave a quick update about the timeline for the Starship program, stating that they will attempt one more ship splashdown on Flight 7 before, if successful, attempting a catch on Flight 8. Wow. That'll be something. There you have it, heard it here first. The real question is whether or not it will bring a payload with it, and I don't just mean a banana this time. How about a full-grown watermelon? Alright, so what about the timeline? When launch? Given all the uncertainties and the differences between an orbital and a suborbital flight in the eyes of the regulators, it is unlikely we'll see it within a month. Come on. However, given how far SpaceX has already come and what they've already proven, they can do and hopefully shouldn't take much longer than that. Ha! Thanks to a talk with Kathy Leaders, the general manager at Starbase, we also know that SpaceX plans to recover a ship within the next 6 months. This means Flight 8 should take place before May. Given that getting approval to re-enter overpopulated areas, such as what would be needed for a catch attempt, will likely be an even greater regulatory headache, we should see Flight 7 take off long before that. Looking at all the factors, a launch before the end of the year is unfortunately unlikely. There is more hard evidence. According to documents filed by NASA to the FAA, SpaceX targets no earlier than January 11th for Flight 7. We know this because they filed for test flights with a Gulfstream which is supposed to do thermal imaging of peak heating of Ship 33 during re-entry. The filing was done because NASA needs a few flights before the launch to calibrate sensors on the plane. The document also confirms that this flight again won't be orbital, as the imaging of re-entry is supposed to happen approximately 1 hour after the launch. That is simply not enough time to complete an orbit. It also states that the sensors will be calibrated at night, which makes another night re-entry very likely. So as seen on all flights before Flight 6, an early morning launch is very likely as well. One thing to keep in mind is that these documents were filed before Flight 6, so this timeline might have changed. But this is good enough to look at our calendar once more. Flight 6 took place on November 19th, conducting Flight 7 on January 11th would put 53 days between the two launches. Considering that this is supposed to be the first Block 2 launch, I would say that this is fast. We've been getting a lot of updates recently about the timelines for certain milestones SpaceX wants to hit and when they plan on catching the ship. While that is all great, we've also seen more information emerge about SpaceX's lunar goals. It all came up during the Flight 6 livestream when SpaceX shared some of these amazing images. Given how close SpaceX's deadline of 2026 to land on the moon for the Artemis program is, these renders are likely very close to what the final design will look like. You can see that SpaceX has indeed decided to remove the solar panels from the outside of the vehicle. We knew this would be done thanks to a small clip SpaceX showed during Flight 4. In the clip, a small render appeared in the background that lacked solar panels. You know, it's just a lot less pixelated now. It's also clear that there are some cutouts just above the fuel tanks, and it is possible that these cutouts are spaces to contain fold-out solar panels. However, it's just as likely that this lander could run off batteries, especially for the shorter, earlier stays planned for the beginning. Duracell making the moon trip possible. We can also see that they've returned to the larger landing engine design, as seen on the earlier versions, while keeping the metallic ring of the newer designs. We still have very little information about these landing engines and their flight heritage, such as whether they are derived from the Draco thrusters used on Dragon or a brand new design. The other obvious thing that stands out is the gigantic line of windows at the top. While this may not be the most technically exciting part of the ship, I can promise you the views out of these will be some of the most transformative we've ever gotten. I mean, just imagine staring out of these windows onto the lunar surface. SpaceX also shared this incredible render of what a future lunar base may realistically look like. Surprisingly, this wasn't even the biggest lunar lander news of the week. While these renders are impressive, most of the information contained in them are things we already suspected, at least. Until NASA decided to share that they are now pursuing cargo landers from both SpaceX and Blue Origin, based on their human lander designs. There you go, Blue Origin. This means we got yet another amazing render, this time of a Starship lowering a trio of pressurized rovers down to the lunar surface. This gives us a good idea of what a possible lunar cargo ship will look like. While it shares the overall design aesthetics with the crewed lander, the main difference is the gigantic cargo door, which also acts as a crane to lower payloads to the surface. When this skyscraper finally lands on the moon, it will be a game changer. However, as powerful as a Starship is, it can't reach the moon with just one launch, as by the time it reaches Earth's orbit, it's almost out of fuel. It is running on fumes. This is why orbital refueling is not only important to the Starship program, but necessary to make it work. Arguably, orbital refueling is just as important as full reusability, which is why we were so happy that, along with all of the lunar lander designs, SpaceX and NASA also shared a render of what orbital refueling will look like. Given that SpaceX plans on performing the first demonstration of this in the next few months, this is likely pretty close to what it will look like in the end. Here we can see a Block 2 tanker ship directly hooked up to a fuel depot, which will then fuel other starships for long distance travel. The render also shows that the Starship is hooked up to the depot in multiple locations for stability, which had previously only been speculated about. Clearly, quite a bit of thought has been put into this depot, and this is very likely close to its final design as well. I'm wondering if other spacecraft can also dock and refuel in the future. SpaceX 711, fuel up and get a hot dog before departing to your destination. This vehicle is key to Starship opening the solar system to us, even more than any lander could be. Once orbital refueling is achievable, we will finally be able to break free from the tyranny of the rocket equation here on Earth and travel farther than ever before. That's it for today. Remember to smash that like button, subscribe for more. This is what fuels the algorithm, and this is how you can help us for free. Check out our epic shirts in your favorite space nerd store, a new Raptor design and our epic brand new Flight 6 design with a banana for scale are both up, the perfect Christmas gift. Link is in the description and in the card you should see now. And if you want to train your space IQ even further, watch this video next to continue your journey. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next episode. Earth every Kent. Oh. New flame trench. Yes. It appears trench which will overall work quite a bit of work. Ha.